I said I'm resting now.
This is good.
Okay.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm just accepting a few more that are in the waiting room, and then we'll just get started in 2 minutes.
So Sinead, you let me know when you've let everyone into the room. Perhaps we'll get started, yeah?
Yeah.
بدنا نشوف كمان عالم. I'm swiping but it's not working. يا مامي إذا بدك تشوفي بدون تعملي لي سوايب.
هذه اسمها شنيد.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'll now introduce you to Mr. Kai Fong that will do the introductions.
Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Andy Kai Fong, Secondary Principal. Thanks for coming along this afternoon. I think we might have upwards of 70 people registered for the call, so I hope that everyone who's registered is able to get in. Look, I guess I just want to start off by saying we've got some information that we'd like to share with you, obviously. Essentially two things. With all your questions that you sent in, there were two really clear themes, and they're reasonably obvious. One of them is around the learning program itself, and the second one is around health and safety. And then there are some other smaller questions that have been offered, which we might get to in the 45 or 50 minutes that we've got together. Most of you may have met Sinead, Ms. McAlone before. So Sinead is one of our assistant principals and also responsible for supporting the Year 7s next year. So you'll see a lot of her at some stage throughout the year. Daniela, are you on the call?
Yes, I'm here. I'm going to put my video on so I can give you a wave. Hi, everybody.
And also from our leadership team, Danielle Escatino is one of our VPs, and she will talk specifically about pastoral, but she can also talk about curriculum and program altogether. So I just wanted to start off by giving you an outline of the program. That's obviously a key question from people, and then we'll take questions around that, and then we'll talk a little bit about the health and safety issues, which are the other big issue that arises from the information that we've got, and then we'll take some questions around that. I think we'll be here for about 50 minutes. Can I just say at the start, I don't believe that we'll get everyone's question answered today, but we will do our best to make you feel more comfortable with the program and confident that actually what your children will be getting will be a great offering, whether they are based at home or remote. So let me start talking about the program itself. The reason I'm not projecting much today is that there are still things that we've got to make decisions on. So we're forming up what we've got. Things are changing every day. We're getting information from KHDA each day, and every time we get some more information, we're adjusting what we need to do to be in line with that. Those are particularly health and safety concerns. But anyway, let's talk about the remote learning from a little bit from last year and then into this year. I believe that what we had last year in our remote learning program, 100% remote learning, was endorsed by the KHDA as being a great offering for our secondary children. And of course, your children would have got exactly the same sort of experience in Year 6. So they're coming in to a mostly face-to-face program with some remote learning, but a remote learning program that's been tried and tested with our staff, and I'm confident will be a great offering for your children. So our priorities really, when we were deciding on who to have at school and who not to have at school most of the time, our understanding was, or it's not our understanding, our messaging from the KHDA is that we were not allowed to have any single year level at school 100% of the time. So in our original plan that we submitted to the KHDA, we had Year 7 and Year 11 and Year 13 100% face-to-face at school. When they sent us back our plan, we were told that we needed to have at least 20% remote learning. So that's why your children in Year 7 have the 20% remote learning component. Now, I know that some of you will be sitting there going, but we have friends at other schools that are getting 100% offering. I can't comment because I haven't looked at the plans for any other school, but I can't comment what they're like. What we do understand is that 100% of the time for a school might be 100% of the days, but it might only be a part day. So we know that some schools are, for example, sending a year level in the morning, so it might be from 8 o'clock till 11 o'clock, and then they might go home for the afternoon. So that's 100% of the days, but it's not 100% of the time. What we're trying to do is offer the same offering to every student, basically, regardless of whether it's face-to-face or remote. So last year we called it the remote learning phase. This year, the word we're using is blended learning, because it's a mixture of face-to-face and remote. So hopefully throughout this afternoon, you're going to hear me refer to two things. One is face-to-face learning that happens at school, and the other one is remote learning, which happens at home. Okay, now, so for Year 7s, the structure is that they are face-to-face in school for 80% of the time, and that they will be remote learning from home the other 20% of the time. So if you do the rough maths on that, that means 4 days out of 5, your children will be at school. And then 1 day out of 5, they will be rostered to be learning from home. We are saying that regardless of whether they're at school, face-to-face, or whether they're remote learning from home, that they're getting the same material and over time the same experience. So we know that we can do things in a remote way that are equally effective as being face-to-face. Again, your children are still at school 4 days out of 5. Now, how are we managing to do that? So most of our Year 7 classes are of a number where we will roster home a certain number. It will be 5 or 6 each day. So it might be that if you are, let's just say, surname A to E, that you will be rostered home for a Monday, and that all the other children in Year 7 will come to school. If you are F to whatever, it will be Tuesday, etc., etc. We're working on those numbers now. The reason it's not as simple as that is because we have some parents who've chosen already to be 100% remote learning, and we have, there'll be absenteeism, and then we've got some parents who still haven't made a decision. So we're dealing with a state of change almost daily, and that's why information is coming out almost on a regular basis. So what you can expect is a communication that says that your child will be rostered home on a Monday. Now, one of the decisions we had to make was, do we change the day every week, or do we keep the day constant for a block of time? Now, the problem with keeping the day constant, so for example, if your child misses every Monday, one of the difficulties is that the classes on that day, they will not be at school for. Now, that's the option that we're going for. The other option is if we change the day every day. So in week 1, your child stayed home on a Monday. In week 2, they stayed home on a Tuesday. Our feeling was that work arrangements would be very, very difficult for you, because the day that you've got your children home, and you might not want them home unsupervised, would be very difficult for you to arrange childcare if you're also managing work. So that's one of the considerations. So what we've decided is that when you get your rostered day home, that day will stay constant. It could be for the month of September. That will mean they'll miss roughly 4 Mondays or 4 Tuesdays or whatever. We would then look at the program and we might rotate that day. So if they missed Monday for the first 4 weeks, we would move them to a Tuesday. It just makes it a little bit more balanced over time. So that's our thinking at the moment. So what will happen is, the other thing that we've been committed to, and also that we committed to in the remote learning period last year, was that your children will be offered all subjects and a full program the entire time. So we felt that was very important. There was some consideration given to dropping some subjects and not offering others and just focusing on English, maths and science. But actually we felt for our younger kids particularly that a broad and balanced curriculum was what we really wanted to offer. So a lot of those reasons are the reasons why we've got the model that we've got. So your children will come to school 4 days out of 5. They will experience the timetable as normal, approximately. Now, from a health and safety point of view, what we've done is this. I'm going to use the term phase 4, and I'm not sure how familiar you will be with, because some of you may not be familiar with secondary. But instead of children moving to classes, the Year 7 group will have a home corridor of between 16 and 18 classrooms on the ground level of phase 4. So for the first fortnight at least, the entirety of their program will be delivered in these 16 to 18 classrooms. Their breaks will be taken inside because it's generally too hot to go outside. That way, what we're doing is we're containing a year level bubble within reason. So if you saw the video and could understand the entry and exit, they will enter one way, be thermally scanned, come into an area that contains 16 or 18 classrooms, have their whole day in there. So they will move classrooms during the day within that 18, but they will still be in that same corridor. At the end of the day, they will exit the same way they entered. And so we're keeping that as Year 7 only as we can. So from a health and safety point of view, we think that serves, as best we can, keeps them in a bubble, if you like. So for the first 2 weeks, as I say, they will spend their entire program in there. So their maths teachers will come to them, their English teachers will come to them, their design tech teachers will come to them and adjust the program, because of course they can't be in the design tech lab. Their science teachers will come to them for that first fortnight. What we want to do is make sure that your children are comfortable at school, because we know that crossing the road is, it might make some of them nervous, but we want to make it simple, we want to make it safe, and we want to make it accessible for all of them. So the video will show them how to get in.
I'm not on mute.
Is that all right if someone could mute there? Thank you, thank you. So they've got the entry and exit, they'll be housed in their home corridor, all their teachers will come to them during the day. That will be for the first fortnight. One of the things that I can share with you from our learning from last year is that the ground moves a lot during these remote learning phases, and it's going to move a lot during this blended learning phase. By that, I mean things will change a lot. So it might be that all of the children in Year 7 who've decided on 100% remote learning decide that it's okay and they all come back to school. We'll cope with that, that's fine. The KHDA may change their rules, in which case we have to change our guidelines and make adjustments. What we found last year was that we were needing to review what we were doing and make changes almost every fortnight. Now, some of those changes would not have been obvious to you as parents, which is perfect, that's how it should be. But actually what it did was it made our systems at school more efficient, it made the kids safer, it improved the program. Those were the reasons why we would do things. What I want you to hear today really is that our Year 7s are a real priority for us in terms of, you know that transitioning is potentially an anxious time. For some, very exciting, and that's great, but for some, an anxious time. So having that happen smoothly is important. With the added complexity of COVID, obviously we need to be thinking about a few more things to make sure that when your son or daughter walks into school, they feel welcomed, they know where to go, they know what classrooms they're going to be in, and they know who their teachers are. So the reason for this Zoom and the letter last week and the tutor conversations next week is all building towards that sense of comfort for you as parents, but also for them as new to secondary. Not new to WSO, which is great, but actually new to secondary. In many ways, in a normal situation, your children would have been moving all over the school for the first fortnight. And we know from past experience that that's sometimes a bit of a scary experience. In this case, quite fortunately, they'll be housed in the same area and they'll be given that 2-week start of school period to get used to the learning model. There will be some travelling around school for practical subjects after the first fortnight, because of course, the floor that they're on doesn't contain a science lab. If we can do science practicals, we'd like to be able to take them there. So we'll practice that and all of those things so they feel comfortable leading into the next phase. So what else can I tell you? So if your children are at school or if they're at home, the lessons are still being delivered using Microsoft Teams. Now, my thinking is that your experience from last year would be such that Zoom probably was the platform that you were using. It might have been Teams, but it might be Zoom. So, so we're using the same platform. Secondary use Microsoft Teams. And so whether your children are at school or whether they are at home, they can access the lesson in the same way. So if your child is at school, the teacher would be in the classroom. There would be, we're allowed up to 18, I think 18 students in a class. Sometimes it's a little more. So we'd have as many students in that room that is socially safe. The teacher would be speaking to the class and interacting with the class. The children at home would see that interaction on Microsoft Teams. So again, I don't know exactly what you experienced when you were parents of year 6, but if you were sitting at home, you will see at times in a lesson, you'll see a teacher in front of you talking to the whole class. You might hear just the voice, means that even if a teacher is not at their computer, your children at home will still hear the audio that's coming through. And there will still be the opportunity for your children from home to ask questions, to answer questions, and to interact with other people in the class. We can do all of that using the Microsoft Teams platform. Now, the advantage for us and for you and for your children of using the Microsoft Teams platform is that teachers are very familiar with it and our students will become very familiar with it, and it allows us to basically have 3/4 of a class at school and 1/4 of a class at home, but still roughly with the same experience. So in a nutshell, that's how it works. And as I say, a full program, all subjects on normal timetable. We have, the structure of the day is slightly different. So because teachers are traveling to students' classrooms, for example, we may have a teacher who's teaching on the top floor year 13 in period 1, who needs to come down and teach a class on ground floor with the year 7s in period 2. So we've had to put in transition time for teachers to move. So it could be anywhere between 5 and about 10 minutes at the moment. That would be a time where children could get up and stretch their legs. Obviously they need to stay socially distanced. They could go to the bathroom, they could get a drink, etc. So it's a break. Now, the reason we've done that is both because we're having teachers traveling, but also we found that actually that transition time between periods last year with our students learning remotely from home was a really nice break. It allowed them to just refresh a little bit, stretch their legs, go to the bathroom and be ready for the next block. So there are those transition periods between each of the lessons. Now, your students won't necessarily, they could decide if they're staying in the same classroom, they can just stay there. If they move into a different classroom, it gives them time to move. And as I say, it's a time for them to get a drink of water, maybe have a little bite to eat if they want to. That's slightly different from normal, but because they're stuck in the same corridor all day, I just want to be really mindful that we look after them in terms of what their needs are. So going to the bathroom, eating, drinking, those are really the things that we need to look out for during this phase where they're there. So yeah, so that's important, and that's how that happens. Bathroom arrangements, they will have their own set of bathrooms only for year 7. Those bathrooms will be only one person in there at a time, and they will be cleaned and sanitised after every use. All the classrooms are set up. So from a health and safety point of view, that starts with the bathrooms. All the classrooms are set up to meet KHDA guidelines. So that includes, that's what I'm saying, the classrooms usually fit 27, 28. They can now only fit between 18 and 20. Those sorts of things. There will be dots on the floor, as you've seen in the malls and shops, to guide people and to keep people socially distanced. And we will walk your children through the rules of travel in that first 2 weeks. So in that first 2 weeks, when they're based in their home corridor, we'll still take them out for a walk up to their science lab as a practice, so they know which set of stairs to use, up on the right, down on the right, which direction to go, etc., etc. But essentially that will just be training for them to get used to the patterns of movement. If we do that for 2 weeks and potentially up to a month, we know that there's going to be slight changes to what we do. We'll make those changes and we'll inform you and the children of those. So in a nutshell, I'll stop talking in a minute. In a nutshell, it gives you a sense of what you can expect coming into and exiting school. It gives you a sense of what you can expect during the day, and it gives you some sense of the health and safety measures. There will also be cleaning going on during the day. So whenever we vacate a class, the thinking is, if we can manage it, that class will be sanitised. It's a process called fogging. It's managed by GEMS have an across company-wide system and company that's doing it, and it's apparently the recommended sanitisation. So they'll come in, they'll fog a room, it will be ready for the next class to go into. So I'll stop talking for the moment. Sinead, is there anything, Sinead or Daniela, is there anything you'd like to add to the learning model or the health and safety aspects that I've talked about?
Not for me in those areas, no, unless there's anything else you'd like us to cover.
Yeah, actually, just seeing your face there, Daniela, thanks. So the other thing I should let you know is that in each of the floors, so Year 7 obviously have a 2/3 of a floor to themselves. What you should know is that there will be, so Sinead will have an office very close to that area, and there will be a head of house in that area too, just to support children, just to be an adult presence, just to be welcoming, etc., etc. So, and obviously next floor up is a different year level, and again another AP, assistant principal, another head of house, etc., etc. So I'll stop talking. Sinead, is there anything you'd like to add? What have I missed?
No, I just want to say, I know how worrying it is as a parent when your child enters into secondary. Hopefully the fact that they are all in one area, it does give them that little bit more time in order to get used to secondary life, and the health and safety of the students is really key. We want to make them feel a part of secondary. They are going to get the full experience, and we're all there to help, support and encourage them, and we're looking forward to seeing them. One thing they do need to make sure they have with them is water. I'm not sure whether or not you saw the video, but they must have water for the whole day, because we're not going to have any water fountains around the school, just because we want to limit the number of, touching machines, etc. So that's a big thing. We know how hot it gets as well, and they must also have their lunch with them for the whole time.
A good point. Thanks, Sinead. So there will be more information coming out. I will release, when we've got it all in detail at a point where we're really comfortable with the finest of detail, we will release a 1-page to you, which will have a summary of the information. It will have a map of the entry and exit points. It will only be for Year 7 parents. So it will be hopefully something that you can put somewhere on 1 page that will just help you understand and feel comfortable with what we're doing. That'll be coming soon.
Also, just a reminder that there's a letter going to parents tomorrow about the Meet the Tutor Day on the 1st of September. So your children, if you want them to come into school, will have the opportunity to meet their tutor. And then parents will have the opportunity to meet the tutor via Zoom. So you'll have a virtual session. If your child doesn't attend the face-to-face session because of health and safety concerns, that's fine. They can join you on the parent session, so they still get to see their form tutor, and that's for all students. And there are a few questions coming in. Will the children have lockers in secondary? There are lockers in secondary. We need to check whether they can be used for health and safety reasons, but there are lockers on each floor for students to use. So whether that's suspended whilst we are going through this situation, we would obviously review that. But once things do go back to normal, yes, there are lockers. Do the students have access to the materials about learning by online? Yes, all materials will be uploaded for the students who are accessing the lessons from home. And there's a question here about will every class be a bubble? So just as Mr. Kaifong summarised there, it will be per year group rather than per class, because obviously our students do move around for their specialist lessons.
Thanks, Daniela. We will confirm, but my gut feeling around the lockers is that they will be a no-go, just because it's another touch point that is a risk.
Yeah, I don't really think they need them because they will be mainly in one room for year 7, so they shouldn't need to carry lots of things around. So there shouldn't be a need for the lockers, but when things go back to normal, yes, they have the opportunity to use them.
And the other thing, actually, you know, so within their home corridor, each tutor group, of which your child is in one of them, will have actually 2 home classrooms. So one of them will be the one mainly used for learning, and the other one will be will have a few desks in it for an overflow classroom. That will be their home sort of classroom. They can leave their bags in there most of the day. Most of their classes will take place in there if we can.
Some people asked about devices and what devices your child needs. I would just say a device that has Microsoft Office on that, so they can access Word, PowerPoint, the internet. So if you already have a device that you used in year 6, that'll be completely fine for year 7. It tends to be when they get to year 9, 10, and 11, when they do their GCSE subjects, where they need particular technological issues on the computer. So any computer is fine for now.
There was a question on there about the 100% remote learning. So can I just talk about that at the moment? We were required to offer every family the opportunity to be 100% remote learning. That's why the survey went out. At the moment, very roughly, there are about between 25 and 30 families in year 7 that have opted to have 100% remote learning. We will be contacting those families either by email or a phone call next week. Effectively, if you are one of the families that has opted for 100% remote learning, or you think you would still like to, then it's confirmed. We accept that. That's your right to choose that. What we need to do is, the reason we'd be contacting you is to confirm that that's still what you want, because we need to build that into our rostering home, because obviously we wouldn't roster you home for a day. We don't need to do that. So that's the reason why we'll be making contact next week. Now, if you miss the deadline to register for 100% remote learning, what I might get you to do is send an email to Sinead. Sinead, I might publish your email address if that's okay, and we'll get parents just to register interest. Then, and if you choose that, that will be fine. Some people are saying, do I have to have it for a period of time, or can I just choose it on a day-to-day basis? The reason that we put it out with a few timeline options on there was so that actually your children could get used to one or the other. So I totally understand why families would choose 100% remote learning for the first month. For example, if they were unsure, it might be that their children have underlying health concerns. It might be that someone in your family has an underlying health concern and you don't want to risk anything. That's completely your choice, and we respect that. But we're probably talking, and look, if you went into 100% remote learning and after week 1, you decided that actually what I'm hearing is that actually my children should be back at school, that choice also remains completely with you. So even if you opted for a month for remote learning, but after 2 weeks you said, actually, you know what, I'm really comfortable with what WSO are offering, then an email to us and say, look, my child will be joining you from next Sunday. That will be fine. We are planning to have a full cohort of Year 7s in. So we will our systems will cope with a few students being out 100% remote learning permanently, but they will also cope when they return. Because obviously we're hoping that you'll all return. That will give you the confidence that that will be the case. If things are taken out of our hand, for example, then that becomes another situation. Actually, that leads me on to one thing, entry and exit. So from a health and safety point of view, obviously the thermal scanning becomes really important. So your children will enter in I think it's the north entrance of phase 4. As you saw in Sinead's video yesterday, there is a thermal camera in there. That thermal camera scans, my understanding is 30 students a second. So we're not running through there, but we are just walking at a normal pace through there. If your child is scanned high, which is more than 37.5 degrees, we would just stand them to one side and let them cool down. Now we know that the outside temperature is probably going to be somewhere between 40 and 45. We don't know how long your children have been outside in that temperature before they come into the foyer. So the first instance is they might just be hot from being outside. So we'll give them a period to cool down, drink of water if you like, let them stand, then we'll rescan them. Our hope is that 95 to 99% of them will have cooled down and they will just proceed to class as normal. If your child remains higher than 37.5 degrees after maybe 1 or 2 more scans, then they will be escorted to, or the medical team will come and get them from us from that area. Now, the medical team is all set up to receive students who have been scanned hot. They will again wait for a period and rescan them. If they still remain at a temperature where we believe it's not safe for them to be at school, then they will be taken to a separate room and you'll be contacted, and I think the time frame is around 30 minutes. We would ask you to come and get them. So we don't know how many people who will be using that room, so that communication will be really important from us, and your availability to get them within half an hour will also be really important. Now, what we're hoping is, if you're a bus child, you can't get on the bus without being scanned. So obviously if you're hot, you probably won't be allowed on the bus. My sense is that if you, as a normal precaution as a parent, if your child you think is running a fever, some of you will have your own digital thermometers or handhelds. I suggest you use those. If you're unsure, my advice to you would be keep your child at home and let us know. They can still access the learning remote that day, so actually they're not being penalised, and if the next day they're feeling better, then they come to school. I think that's just a collective responsibility that we have for each other. Anyways. So, any more questions appeared on the chat room?
I can see that there's a question about school uniform. So class list will be going tomorrow, and then you can then know which house your child is in so you can get the school uniform. The day when your child has a PE lesson, they will come in that day in their PE kit. And the other question that was asked was about school books. School books are actually going to be left in that classroom. So students will not be taking books home, they'll be leaving them in that classroom. And somebody asked about food in the canteen. There will be no canteen open, so students must bring enough food and snacks for the whole entire day.
Oh, now sorry, Sinead, my understanding, and there'll be something coming out from Slices, our cafe. I think the rules have changed again. So my understanding is, and wait for the confirmation from Slices, is that I believe there will be an opportunity for students to order food, and that food will be delivered to their room. That's the last thing that I heard. But again, wait for that confirmation and we'll get that out to you. My understanding is there will be a separate communication from Slices, which is the cafeteria operator, and there will be a separate communication from Threads, which is the uniform provider. And it will either come through us to you, or it may go directly to you as parents. So, good question. So what if there is a confirmed COVID case in Year 7? Yeah, so obviously that's the question on everyone's mind. So if we do have a confirmed COVID case, what we're getting today or tomorrow are the guidelines for tracking and tracing. So by that I mean, let's just say I was the student in year 7 and I went home that night, wasn't feeling well, and saw the doctor and was confirmed COVID. If we can do that, it's probably not going to happen that quickly. But as soon as we confirm a case of COVID, we then need to try and track and trace the students, the teachers, and the year levels that that student has been in contact with. Partly the reason for keeping the students isolated in their own home corridors for the first night is a little bit of that, but we know that eventually there's going to be more movement. So you're potentially, a whole year level could go out for a quarantine period of at least 2 weeks if someone gets diagnosed in their year level. So yes, that is the possibility, and that's why we're trying to keep year levels apart from others. So that's the process at the moment. As I say, we're waiting for confirmation of the tracking and tracing rules. So what about the musicals? Are you going to go for it or not? So just to give you an idea of the auditorium, so you know our auditorium, our theatre seats, I think somewhere in the vicinity of 650 to 700 students. That has been reconfigured to fit in with the KHDA health and safety guidelines. That room can now fit just over 100 students in it, or 100 adults. And the recommendation is that we do not gather in those sorts of numbers for any event whatsoever. So at this stage, and again, this is not a definite answer. At this stage, it would be very difficult for productions to go ahead. I think they would be a back half of the year thing, if that. So watch the space. Anything else on there you'd like to pick up, Daniela or Sinead?
No, just about the performing arts, the shows. Also, I don't know how much you went to, Sandy, but it's about bringing the students together as well. I did speak to Mrs. Lewis, who's overseeing our performing arts, about this. One thing we are looking to try and do is to give extra provision at some point to those students who are meant to be in performing arts tutor groups, for example. So we'll be looking at opportunities to expose them to the arts. But they would be in their year group. They wouldn't be mixed with the students, which they would have been if they were in their performing arts tutor groups. And it seems unlikely, again, the same, that we would be doing a school show for term 1 at least.
Yeah. Nora, thanks for your question there about tests and rules for coming back. So I believe that all of our staff have just been asked to sign a declaration about, I think, their travel and also COVID and being COVID free. My understanding yesterday was that we're waiting for a confirmation on what's required from children and families in relation to that. I mean, in the most extreme case, it would require a COVID free test, but again, don't quote me on that, because that we're still waiting for confirmation of that. As soon as we've got that, we'll share that with you. And Andrew, the SDA, I think that's the Sports Development Academy. I think that's what you are talking about. So Daniela alluded to that a bit. One of the difficulties with the Sports Development Academy and the Performing Arts is that they generally cross year levels. So they've got either year 7, 8, 9, 10, or 10, 11, 12, 13. So I know for Performing Arts that they're thinking of offering some program in year levels. I think, Daniela, is that what you just said? I'm not sure what sports, what the SDA would be doing. We can find out for you, unless you know, Daniela.
Yes, correct. So we will look, maybe not for the first few weeks. The most important thing at the start is obviously students establishing their routine, and also making sure that everybody's kept safe and well. But then after a few weeks, we will look at introducing, moving students to maybe specialist classrooms, spending some tutor time with students who would have been in the performing arts tutor groups, or in those certain areas where they would either sing, dance or act. I understand it's similar for the sports. What we'll do is we'll speak to Rebecca Lewis, who is overseeing those, and we'll get something sent out just to clarify what will be happening at the start, but what we also anticipate to happen, and then that'll give you some idea of where we would like to go with it.
Okay. Someone's asked about school timings. At the moment, our school timings are 7:40 to 3:20. So we've got a slightly earlier start to the day, 5 minutes earlier. We are finishing at normal time. The reason for finishing at normal time is so that we are tying in with our primary colleagues, siblings, etc. Actually, one more thing when I think of siblings, just to let you know, obviously I've talked about your children being rostered home one day of the week for their online learning. If you have, obviously you've got a child in year 7, that's why you're here. So if you've got a child in year 7, but you also have 1 or 2 children in primary, if we will have you on a sibling list, we will try and match up siblings rostering home as best we can. So I know that some families are concerned about that because it might not match up. We will do our best on the secondary side to match up days out for your children with their siblings. Just so you know that. Yeah. I wonder if there's time for any questions from the floor, or is it easier just coming in on the chat room? Actually, it's probably just easier than coming in on the chat.
Just jump in on there, sorry, about are bags allowed with wheels? No, they're actually, bags with wheels are not allowed because of health and safety issues. We've had members of staff and other students trip over them and have some quite serious injuries. However, if there is a physical reason, if the child has some form of disability, which means they can't carry anything on their back, then we would need to know that, because that would be an exception to the rule.
I'm looking through some of these questions. I think we've answered them. What video are you referring to? Sorry, I might have missed it. Now, we sent out a letter to our Year 7 parents last night, an email. On it, there should have been 5 links or 4 links to videos, which the one with Sinead in it is the one that is relevant for you because it shows a little bit for Year 7. So those should have been in your inbox last night, unless we've got an incorrect email address. So sorry, is it Barrow Girl? If you didn't receive that last night, it might be that you need to touch base with admissions and check the email address that we have on system for you.
I can also send that video directly to you. I'll just make a note as well.
Okay. So Nora, pens and pencils. So again, this will come to you. The expectation, and following on from what Sinead says, is that your children will bring their own device to school. They'll bring their own pens and pencils to school. They'll bring all their own water and all their own food. We do have some equipment at school that we use that the children won't have. We need to work out systems for cleaning those between use. So for example, potentially paintbrushes for art. We were talking about aprons for foods and those sorts of things. So we've got some equipment at school that we need to work out how to sanitize between use. But otherwise, if the more that your children are using their own gear and responsible for cleaning that, the safer that they are and you are, anyways. So how many days a week will PE happen? PE will happen as per normal on the timetable. So that will just, normally, Year 7, Daniela, how often would students have PE for in Year 7?
Sorry, say that again?
How many periods of normally would students in Year 7 have PE for?
So they have 6 periods in a day, but some of them would be double lessons, some of them would be single. So it depends really what their timetable would look like. So yeah, it depends. I mean, if there's a science lesson over 2 hours, and then they have another lesson over 2 hours, it means that they would have 4 lessons in a day, because the other 2 would be singles.
Yeah. Okay.
So in terms of PE, they have 2 hours a week.
Okay, great.
And in terms of PE, they will come into their PE on the day they have PE. They will enter into school with their PE kit on, because there's no changing facilities allowed.
Well,
exactly. And for subjects like history would be a 1 hour lesson, geography would be a 1 hour lesson, computer science would be a 1 hour lesson. Yeah. And they'd have those once a week.
Andrew, your question about the ski trip, I would say no at this stage. We can revisit that later in the year once we're settled into program. Great question, Vishwanti, about Thursdays. can I just say at the moment we are making a decision on the finishing time for Thursday. We've got a need to tie in with primary for siblings in travel. We've got some added complexities around Arabic that we're trying to solve at the moment. So a decision around finish time on Thursdays will come to you soon.
Swimming will be one of the sports that will not be running, Nora, just for the initial period.
Z8436, we are recording this and we will make it available to everyone to view, yes. What else do we have on here?
Do students who attend face-to-face learning have access to the materials like learning via online? Yes, they will. They'll be exposed to the same teaching and materials. They'll all be available for all students.
So when your children did the taster sessions as well, they were actually experienced in Microsoft Teams. So it'll be exactly the same way. So the teachers will label and store everything in the correct folders. And there will also be sessions later on to support you with the team so that you can help your child at home.
I think if you're unfamiliar with Teams, I think what we will try and do is support you to upskill. So we might be able to run a Zoom session and support you on how to understand Teams. The more that you understand Teams as parents, the easier it will be to communicate with us and understand what's going on with your children. So we know that our parents who are confident and familiar with Teams feel comfortable with the environment, and it's been a big plus. So there'll be an opportunity for those once we start.
I just want to say your children will meet with their tutor every single morning for 40 minutes, and that really is your point of contact. I know that as parents you're used to having one class teacher, and then suddenly when you move over to secondary you have lots of different specialist teachers. So if you have any inquiries or questions, please just reach out to your tutor, your child's tutor, and they'll get back to you. Even if that means them going to somebody else, we'll get back to you in a timely manner so that you feel at ease.
And just going to your question, Nora, because it relates to what Miss McElholmes just said, we understand that children will be apprehensive about coming back to school if they've gone for that option. Obviously, they can't wait to see their teachers and their friends, but they will have some fear as well, and you know, we get that. So as Miss McElholmes was just saying, it's the role of the tutor on a daily basis to reassure the children and to make sure that they're cared for and that they know that they've got somewhere to go if they feel they need that. There's also a question here about books, which is a really good question. So for the students who are 100% remote learning, will they have access to books? We'll be looking at PDF versions of books where possible anyway, to reduce the amount of touching resources. For those subjects that don't have a PDF version, we'll be asking the heads of department to look into that to make sure the students working from home do have everything they need. So leave that with us, please.
And Claire, your question around house changes, Daniela, I think the houses and tutors are tomorrow.
Correct. So houses, tutors and information about the student induction day on the 1st of September will be going out tomorrow. They'll have, so year 7s, so some of them requested friendship groups, just to make you aware that we have had to move some things around with class sizes. You can get in touch with us obviously if there's any major concerns, but hopefully everybody's happy, and then you can then know what house they're in as well if you need to purchase anything for that.
And Vero Girl, remote learning, we're required to video every lesson, as was the case, I think, in about the last quarter of remote learning period last year. So right. The great advantage of that is that they are stored, that students can access those lessons again if they want to, and that some students who are maybe remote but not in the same time zone can actually access those lessons asynchronously as well.
If your child, just had a question here about learning support. I believe LSS is the learning support assistant. You should have received, if they are level 3, you should have received information from Leanne Cox, who's our special educational needs coordinator. She leads our students of determination. I will put her email out on here for you to contact her if you have any questions about learning support in particular.
Okay, I'm just conscious of time. So in the last couple of questions, and then we might wrap up. I think we've dried up a wee bit. Okay. Well, look, we are about to engage in a session with year 8 and 9 parents now. Can I just, on behalf of obviously Daniela and Sinead, just thank you for being available today. We obviously hope that it's helpful. I hope you know that we're not taking this lightly at all. There's been an enormous amount of planning and thinking that's happened over the summer and continues to happen now, and really that's all around provision of a really high quality learning experience for your children, allied with a really high quality of health and safety provision as well, and our site team are incredible in that regard. So I just thank you now, and we'll sign off. We'll video this and make the video available for you to watch again, or for other parents who weren't able to make it. There is more information coming out for you over the next week or so. And if at any stage you need to contact one of us, our emails are available, I think, on the website anyway. So I'm always happy to answer questions from people as we go. So thank you for your time this afternoon. It was really nice to see so many people engaged, and we look forward to starting the year well, and obviously somehow building a relationship with you over the next few years. All right, take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.